Chapter 1, Prologue. Emotions. A strong feeling, reaction, deriving from one's circumstances, mood, or relationship with others. I never fully understood them. They weren't foreign to me: anger, sadness, fear, guilt. I've experienced them all. Plenty of times before. As humans, we were inherently designed to feel them. But merely experiencing them didn't equate to understanding them. A certain voice hung in the air. It was gentle, yet carried a gravity that drew my attention. Two lackluster gray eyes seemed fixed on me. Or, felt like it. I knew that it wasn't possible since the one talking was inside the TV screen. However, as I gazed into those eyes, I had a sudden thought: why does it feel like they're looking right at me? PFTT. I shook my head. Stupid. This is the last step, right? The last step before my hell is finally over? He stood solitary, amidst the wreckage. The landscape lay strewn with debris and shattered structures. The world around him seemed to have halted, frozen in a moment in time. In that instant, the dullness in his gaze faltered, and what appeared to replace it was something akin to anguish. Grief. Ha! The man clutched his shirt, slowly wrinkling it as his lips slowly curled into a hazy smile. I'll do it. His head lowered to meet another gaze. With black hair, this person knelt on the ground with their back faced against the screen, gazing up at the gray-eyed man. No words escaped their lips, they simply stared. Perhaps he wanted to say something, but couldn't. After all, a large gaping wound was present on his back. Ah, yes. I shouldn't drag this out. The gray-eyed man lifted his hand, unveiling the cold gleam of a sword. His lackluster gray eyes quivered ever so slightly as the blade descended in one fluid motion. Shiing. I've waited far too long for this. The screen turned black. So what do you think? I heard a familiar voice call out to me, and I lowered my gaze. Not bad, I guess. While I inherited more from our father, it was evident that he had drawn more from our mother. His auburn locks cascaded gracefully to his forehead, and his green eyes gazed back at me. This kid, who was my only remaining family, was my brother, Nolro. Not bad? Just that? What do you want me to say? I wasn't much of a gamer. In fact, I never had the time to play games. There were things that I needed to prioritize in my life and never had the time to spend on leisure. It shouldn't come as a surprise that I found the game uninteresting. I mean, you can lie. And why would I do that? Because it's my favorite game. What sort of reasoning was this? I blinked slowly before reaching for my drink. You know, I think it's best if you don't drink. I don't care. Taking hold of the glass cup, I felt its coarse texture beneath my fingers before slowly bringing it towards my lips. As the glass drew nearer, my attention fixated on the brownish liquid it contained. It was whiskey, a choice that seemed fitting for the moment. As I cast my gaze downward, my reflection stared back at me, giving me a glimpse of the person I had become. Hollow eyes, a vanishing mane of hair, protruding cheekbones, my visage had become something I wasn't able to recognize. Even my hand quivered as I clutched the cup. I've had better days. I smiled bitterly to myself. Stage 4 lung cancer. Not a pretty disease. I still remember to this day the numerous emotions I felt during the day I received the news. I was just 24 years old. How was it possible for me to get cancer? But there was no denying what was inside me. So, I just accepted it. Acceptance didn't come quickly. At first, I fought. I changed my diet and underwent chemotherapy. But my life became miserable from that point on. All my savings started to drain, and each day seemed more hollow than the other. That was when I accepted my situation and just stopped everything. Okay, fine. I'm dying. Still. Sip. Why make what remained of my life a torture? I might as well enjoy what remained of it. Even if it made my life shorter. Bitter. My chest burned and my hand trembled. Despite that, I kept a firm grip on the glass and continued to sip on it. Every breath I took was laced with pain, yet the pain at the back of my throat held a strangely comforting allure. So I focused my attention on it. Relished it. Brother, are you really just going to drink like that? Noel's worried voice reached my ears. But despite his worry, I continued to drink. Let me be. I closed my eyes and savored the pain at the back of my throat. Only this way could I forget about the other pain that was constantly invading my body. Sip. It hurt. I felt so tired. I could barely move. And I felt so useless. But. I felt comfortable. Yes. This is how it should be. Cough. I was caught off guard. I wasn't able to hold it. My chest pounded fiercely, and my hand visibly shook. It took every little bit of my willpower to not drop my glass. Brother. I'm. Cough. Fine. I opened my eyes to see Noel staring at me with a worried look. My vision shook, and my hand almost gave out, but I held it in. Staring back at him, I only felt guilt. He was only 16 years old. Our parents had died a long time ago, and I was his remaining family. I didn't want to leave him alone, but what choice did I have? If I chose to stay longer, with what money was he going to survive? In a way, stopping chemotherapy wasn't just because I didn't want to prolong my suffering. It was also a way for me to leave him something before I left. Rather than leaving him in debt and dying, I'd rather die and leave him with something to lean on. It was my duty. My duty as his brother. Drip. Drip. Tears streamed down his face as he gazed at me. The incessant buzzing in my head made it difficult to discern his words, but it appeared he was trying to call an ambulance. I stopped him and shook my head before pointing toward the TV. Tell me. Tell me about the game. Game? Seeing his reaction, I managed to force a smile. Yeah. Tell me why it's your favorite game? He wouldn't stop talking about it. That. He looked unsure of what to say, but after glancing at me once more, he wiped his tears and started to recount everything. The game is called Rise of the Three Calamities, and the main character is called Leon. He's an orphan and the story starts at Haven. An institute, or more like an academy where cadets are trained for the future of the Nurse Saint Shefe Empire. One of the 4 great empires. To be honest, I was only able to make out a couple of words. After a certain time, all I could see was his mouth moving, but I just nodded along. For the sake of it. I had to pretend to be fine. So just let me die faster. Time seemed to flow endlessly and before I knew it, Noel was standing by the door of the apartment. Brother, I'm going to go grab some lunch. I'll bring you your favorite. That. I could hear. And just as his hand grasped the door, his feet came to a sudden stop. I'll see you soon. Okay? Okay. I answered back, albeit weakly. Good. Clank. The door closed and silence filtered across the room. For some unknown reason, the silence brought a smile to my face. My eyes slowly closed, and I reveled in the silence. Cough. Coo. Gh. Yet that tranquility proved fleeting as I was seized by uncontrollable coughing. When I reopened my eyes and gazed down, I caught sight of my hands which were stained in blood. My blood. It. A clink resonated in the air. The cup in my grasp had finally tumbled to the ground, and the world began to whirl around me. Looks like I can't maintain the facade any longer. Whiskey spilled onto the floor, and my chest throbbed intensely with pain. I had managed to hold back before, but such a thing was no longer possible as all energy drained from my body and I leaned back on my chair. It's good that he didn't see me in this state. Sometimes, one suffers in silence not out of embarrassment, but out of necessity. How could I allow my brother to see this? Ha. Aha. I felt my chest tremble as something pierced right at my heart. It wasn't the same pain I was accustomed to, but a different pain. Anger. Regret. Sorrow. Sadness. Emotions. That's what the pain was. I felt them vividly. I could tell them apart. I was familiar with each and every one of them. But I didn't understand them. And with these last thoughts, my eyelids gradually closed. Ah. That's when I took my last breath. Or so I thought. Chapter 2, Julian D. of Venus, 1. I'm still alive? There was no way. But I was starting to doubt it. That was despite feeling certain that I had drawn my last breath. It was the only logical conclusion I could make as I found myself standing on the remains of a city. My sinuses clogged up as a result of the smoke that lingered in the air, and I heard a low, steady ringing in my head at the same time. Sort of like the buzz of a mosquito, but a lot more annoying than that. With all of that taken into account, I was certain that there was something wrong with the situation. I felt there, yet not at the same time. If that made any sense? Must be some sort of hallucination one experiences before death. It had to be. I was more convinced of this when I found myself standing amidst the ruins of a city unknown to me, confused by the peculiar architecture of the buildings. They appeared to belong to a distinct era, unlike anything familiar to my own. How weird. The entire situation was weird and I had trouble wrapping my head around it. Despite my eagerness in wanting to find out more about what was happening to me and what the city around me was, I couldn't. I was stuck where I was. Or more like, I was trapped. I could see, smell, hear, taste, and touched just fine. It was just that, I had no control over my body. I felt as though I were a marionette, manipulated by an external force. Rumble. Rumble. My focus was captured by a distant rumble, prompting my head to turn toward the source of the sound. A voice unknown to me emerged, flowing from my lips. "It's about time." I thought they'd be slower. There was something about the voice. It sounded unnatural, almost robotic in my ears, but I couldn't quite tell. Just what is happening? I was flustered, but what else could I do? There was no way out for me, and all I could do was just observe. Boom. A distant building disintegrated, and from within its ruins emerged a particular figure. Our eyes met, and I instantly sensed an overwhelming weight pressing down on my body, stifling me. "I finally found you." A screeching voice reverberated through the air and the sky turned a scarlet color. The pressure that bore down on me increased, and she soon appeared before my very eyes. She was breathtaking. More so than anyone I'd ever seen in my life, making me further question the validity of what I was seeing. Adorned with flowing, fiery red locks cascading down her back, her hair danced in the sunlight, displaying hues of crimson, copper, and gold, as if flames had been artfully woven into the fibers. But it was her eyes that truly caught my attention. Gleaming like golden orbs, they possess a depth and brilliance that seem to reflect the distant sun. Just what is happening? And why is she looking at me like that? She seemed eerily familiar, yet at the same time wasn't. I more or less knew that I had seen her before, but I couldn't quite picture when. "Is that all you have to say to me?" Her gaze contained a little something. I couldn't quite understand what it was. Perhaps longing? Disappointment? I wasn't too sure. My mouth had just parted open when all of a sudden, the sky which had previously dyed red, turned a purplish hue, and lightning began to crackle down from the sky. Cracka. Cracka. It tore at everything beneath, destroying the buildings and infrastructures with an unstoppable might. In a matter of moments, the clouds ruptured, unveiling the silhouette of a woman. Her vibrant purple hair swayed gracefully through the expanse of the sky, while her piercing gaze, brimming with an overwhelming sense of animosity, fixated upon me. Cracka. Cracka. The sky continued to be ravaged by relentless lightning, intensifying the pressure that oppressed every inch of my being. The force was so formidable that my legs nearly buckled beneath me. Yet, inexplicably, the individual I was presently possessing displayed unwavering stubbornness. My bones cracked, and I was having a hard time breathing under the extreme pressure. Yet, as if what I was experiencing meant nothing, I remained standing where I was. "So, you're finally here too." His voice carried through the air, reaching the woman with lustrous, purple hair suspended in mid-air. The lightning surrounding her crackled with increased intensity, while her gaze seethed with amplified hatred. However, she remained immobile, as if she couldn't move at all. That was when I felt my lips curl, and the world underwent another change. From red to purple. To black. Abruptly, darkness engulfed my sight, causing the distant city to vanish entirely. The sky dissipated, and everything in my surroundings disappeared, leaving only the two women ahead of me. Emerging from the depths of the inky abyss, a figure took shape in the distance. Her eyes, a vivid shade of crimson, radiated with an intense luminosity that pierced through the darkness, unveiling a cascade of snowy white hair flowing down her shoulders. She too looked at me with nothing but hatred. Ah! I get it now. Her appearance was what it took to make me understand why they felt so familiar to me before. They are the same girls from the game that my brother showed me. Just before my death. There was one game my brother continued to talk about. Rise of the Three Calamities. I didn't know much about the game as I never got the chance to play it, but it was something my brother was enthusiastic about. He wouldn't stop talking about it. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place as soon as all three appeared before me, triggering a recollection of the game's cover. Although I had only glimpsed it briefly without giving it much thought, it took me a moment to jog my memory. But now, I was certain. The three women who stood in front of me, glaring at me with such hatred that made my heart palpitate, were the same three calamities that belonged to the game my brother showed me just before my death. Or what I thought was my death. I wasn't too sure anymore. They were most likely the older version of the girls on the background of the cover. Contrary to their youthful portrayal on the cover, the women before me. His intense, hazel eyes held a mesmerizing depth, shimmering under the blackness of the liquid, matching his lustrous black hair. The strong, chiseled features of his face were accentuated by a well-defined jawline and a perfectly proportioned nose. Never in my life had I ever seen anyone this handsome. Ha, I really must be dead. LS were already upon me. Coming from all sides, Their power sent shivers down my spine. But despite it all, I remained where I was, feeling a slight curl at the end of my lips as the chalice drew to my mouth and I took a sip. It's bitter. PFTTT. At that very moment, as the initial sip of liquid touched my lips, a searing agony tore through me. I felt something drip from the side of my mouth as my head slowly lowered. It was there that I caught a glimpse of a large sword. It passed right through my chest. Drip. Drip. Red stained the top of the sword as it dripped from the corner of my mouth. Slowly, my head turned, and it was there that I caught a glimpse of two dull gray eyes staring back at me. Right. I forgot about you. The Julian D. Venus, Level 17, Tier 1 Magician, Exp. 0%-16% minus 100%. Profession, Magician, Type, Elemental, Curse, Type, Mind, Emotive. Spells, Beginner Type Spell, Emotive, Anger, Beginner Type Spell, Emotive, Sadness, Beginner Type Spell, Emotive, Fear, Beginner Type Spell, Emotive, Happiness, Beginner Type Spell, Emotive, Disgust, Beginner Type Spell, Emotive, Surprise, Beginner Type Spell, Curse, Chains of Alakantria, Beginner Type Spell, Curse, Hands of Malady. Skills, Innate, Foresight. Chapter 3, Julian D. Venus. It hurts. The vision shattered, leaving behind a raw, unrelenting pain that refused to leave. It felt as if someone had punched at my chest over and over again. No. It felt more like someone had stabbed right through my chest. Yuck. A light groan escaped my lips as I tried to move my body. Wait. My eyes flared open and light immediately entered my sight. I'm alive? My voice came out hoarse. But without a doubt, it was my voice. Albeit unfamiliar. As my eyes absorbed the light, the world around me seemed hazy. I swallowed my saliva. This. Julian D. Venus. Level 17, Tier 1 Magician. Exp. 0%-16%-100%. Profession, Magician. Type, Elemental, Curse. Type, Mind, Emotive. Spells. Beginner Type Spell, Emotive, Anger. Beginner Type Spell, Emotive, Sadness. Beginner Type Spell, Emotive, Fear. Beginner Type Spell, Emotive, Happiness. Beginner Type Spell, Emotive, Disgust. Beginner Type Spell, Emotive, Surprise. Beginner Type Spell, Curse, Chains of Alakantria. Beginner Type Spell, Curse, Hands of Malady. Skills. Innate, Foresight. Something floated in front of me. I only caught a small glimpse of it. By the time I blinked, it was gone. Yuck. My head continued to throb. How am I still alive? It didn't make sense. The last memories I could recall were the last moments before my passing. The exchange with my brother, the lingering scent in the room, and the bittersweet, yet smoky taste of the whiskey coming down my throat. How is this possible? As my vision cleared up, I tried to make out my surroundings. It was an unfamiliar setting. Nothing like I'd ever seen before. My initial focus was drawn to the large desk right before me. It loomed large, dominating the space with its gleaming, well-polished wooden top. Strangely, there appeared to be nothing resting atop the desk except for a vintage, antique night lamp, which emitted a soft, subdued glow, casting an eerie light across the room. Clank! Exclamation mark. A sudden noise jolted me from behind, and my body tensed. The back of my hair stood on end, and I flicked my head to look behind me. Expecting the worst, my legs tensed as I readied to move out of my spot. But, no one? I frowned. There was nothing behind me except for a tall wooden bookshelf, adorned with a diverse array of books in various sizes and colors. Beneath it was a small book that seemed to have fallen to the ground. It must have been the source of the noise. Looks like yuck. A sudden pain jolted me out of my thoughts. It pounded fiercely at my chest, and whatever words I was about to utter stopped. The pain was intense. More than anything I had ever felt before. Every part of me shook, and my muscles started to spasm. What the? It was at that moment that I at last laid eyes on the sword jutting out from within my chest. My entire body tensed as I felt every inch of my mind freeze at the sight that bore before my very eyes. How? As if the scene from before replayed in my mind, a sword appeared. It slowly clawed its way up from my back and into my body. Horrified, I could only watch as the sword drew deeper into my body and pierced right through my chest. I wanted to scream, cling to something, run. But my body was frozen. I could only watch as the sword pierced through me, and pain invaded every inch of my body. Blood trickled down my pristine white shirt, delicately drawing webs on my forearm before staining the wooden floor beneath, forming a muted puddle that gradually spread. Drip. Drip. Like the repetitive tick of a clock, the blood persistently trickled down to the ground. The sight turned my stomach, and I could feel the color draining from my face. It was the first time I had ever witnessed something so gruesome. Ha! Aha! My breath started to feel heavy and my vision started to blur once more. But before I knew it, the pain stopped. I didn't know when. I had long lost track of time. I extended my hand towards my back, where I could feel the hilt of the sword. My fingers brushed against the soft leather grip that encased it, and for a moment, I contemplated pulling the sword out. But then, slowly, I withdrew my hand. Despite the pain and the situation, I remained rational. Yanking the blade from my chest would probably kill me. I knew that much. Ha! My chest trembled as I took another breath. As if I had swallowed lava, my chest burned with each inhale. Drip. Drip. And blood continued to drip down from my chest. When I finally found my voice again, I managed a soft mumble. Is this what hell feels like? I wanted to laugh then and there. Because it feels like shit. But pain. I was used to pain. Every part of me hurt, but compared to what I had been through the past few years, it was manageable. I could take this much. Sizzle tilde. I believed it was over, but suddenly, a faint sizzling sound caught my attention. At that moment, a searing pain shot through my right forearm. The pain was just as unbearable as the pain from before. It was entirely focused on my forearm. But I kept my mouth shut and stared at my forearm. Pain I could deal with. It wasn't anything new. What grabbed my attention was the faint glow that formed on my forearm. On the spot where the pain was radiating. Gradually, my eyebrows furrowed, and the glow on my forearm subsided. A tattoo? A four-leaved clover was deeply etched on my forearm. It looked like a cheap tattoo. It was all in black, and besides the soft glow that was slowly subsiding, there seemed nothing special about it. The more I stared at it, the more I felt like there was nothing special to it. That was until all four leaves lit up with a strange white glow. Stunned, I felt my eyes widen, and just before I could do anything, the world around me froze. I lost control of myself. I could no longer move, and everything around me gradually lost its color. From the pool of blood beneath me, as though time were unwinding itself, the blood began to defy gravity, trickling upward and returning into my body. Yet again, I was shocked. But I could do nothing. I was stuck in place. All I could do was watch as time seemed to reverse. The elaborate blood patterns woven on my forearm began to shift and retract, seamlessly returning to my chest. Simultaneously, the sword that had penetrated my chest initiated a similar backward motion, gradually withdrawing from my chest. I struggled to come to terms with what I was seeing and all sorts of thoughts flashed through my mind. But clank! They all shattered when I heard the clanking sound of the sword behind me. Ha! Ha! The world regained its color, and I felt my breath again. What? Everything around me was back to normal. From the book that fell from the bookshelf to the floor which was no longer stained in blood. I remained seated where I was. Confused and dazed. It took me a moment to recover my bearings, and when I did, the first thing I did was stare at the sword that was lying on the floor. There was something about it that felt unsettling to me. It was as if there was a certain connection that linked between it and me. One that I couldn't explain. Just as I was about to move to pick it up. Clank! They all shattered when I heard the clanking sound of the sword behind me. Ha! Ha! The world regained its color, and I felt my breath again. What? Everything around me was back to normal. From the book that fell from the bookshelf to the floor which was no longer stained in blood. I remained seated where I was. Confused and dazed. It took me a moment to recover my bearings, and when I did, the first thing I did was stare at the sword that was lying on the floor. There was something about it that felt unsettling to me. It was as if there was a certain connection that linked between it and me. One that I couldn't explain. Just as I was about to move to pick it up. Clank! The door to the room opened. Young master. A cold and even voice echoed within the confines of the room. It was a familiar voice. One which I vaguely remembered hearing before. When I turned my head, my hair stood on end. What? Two dull gray eyes stared back at me. For a moment, my thoughts stopped. Why is he here? Who is he? And where am I? The man from the vision. The man from the game. And the man who killed me in the vision. They've called your name. It's your turn to take the test. Why was he standing before me? And why did it feel so real? Ah. I've finally lost it, haven't I? I wanted to laugh but found myself unable to. Young master? As if my action seemed weird, he tilted his head. Are you okay? Your face looks a little pale. He took a step to approach me but I raised my hand to stop him. Recollections of the last memory kept replaying in my mind over and over again. As if it was a tape on repeat. I had so many questions I wanted to ask him but kept my mouth shut. My instincts, or more like, brain, was telling me that it wasn't a good idea. Young master? And just as my name was called out again and he was about to approach me, I helped myself up from the chair. Lead the way. Chapter 4, Julian D. Venus, 3. Lead the way. To where? The echo of my footsteps rang in my ears as I followed the man from the vision from behind. He seemed younger than the vision, and was it just me, or did he look pale? Still, thinking back to my actions, I had acted purely out of instinct. I knew nothing about the situation. Nor who the man in front of me was. No, not quite. I had an idea. One that I refused to believe. However, if there was something clear to me, it was that whoever the man in front of me was, he could kill me at a moment's notice. One wrong move and I was dead. Master has asked that you manage to pass the examination. In case of failure, he is prepared to exonerate you from the family. His cold and even tone resounded across the empty corridor as he moved ahead of me. I remained silent throughout the entire time. It's important that you pass the examination. I can't stress that enough. For my sake as well. Examination? What examination? I strained my ears and listened attentively. Every piece of information was vital for me. That said, I don't believe a situation like that will happen. You're more than capable of passing the examination. At the very least, you shouldn't be worse than the commoners who only had 1 year of practice. He continued to speak along the way. As I listened to his words, my eyes couldn't help but trace towards my surroundings. What sort of place is this? The corridor seemed vast. Large windows lit up the corridors with purple curtains draped around them. It gave off a medieval vibe. But there was no way, right? How could it? We're here, young master. I had no time to adjust myself to my surroundings before I found myself standing in front of a large wooden door. My feet came to a halt and he pushed the door open to reveal a large hall where hundreds of people stood. They all lined up in an orderly manner, facing another door at the very end of the hall. You are? A woman with short black hair and glasses approached me. She held a clipboard in her hand and scanned me up and down. My heart grew tense at her appearance. I thought back on her question, you are? And found myself unable to answer. I'd like to know that as well. Even so, I kept my composure. We stood like that for a couple of seconds before her eyes fell on my chest where realization finally hit her. Ah, you must be from the Venus barony. She glanced at her clipboard. Julian Dacre of Venus. I see you. Julian Dacre of Venus? Tapping the board, she smiled. Please follow me. I'll lead you to the examiners. I secretly sighed in relief before glancing back for a brief moment. My eyes met his for a moment and he nodded. I looked away and followed the lady. She seemed to be leading me toward the large door in the distance. I could feel the gazes of those around me as I moved. However, I paid them no mind. Not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't spare them the thought. The closer I was to the door, the faster my heart started to beat. The only thing I knew was that I had to take an examination. What sort of examination, I didn't know. My palms felt sweaty and my legs felt like lead. Each step felt heavier than the last. The only reason I followed along was purely because the situation forced me to. It felt like I had to move. But what now? We're here. Please don't be too nervous. They won't bite. The woman graciously opened the door, revealing the expanse of a generously decorated room. Elegant paintings adorned the walls, flanking the space alongside pristine white pillars. What grabbed my attention was the large wooden desk that sat in the middle of the room. 4 individuals sat behind it, and in front of them was a boy with blonde hair and blue eyes. He wore a strange uniform and stood upright before the 4 of them. I felt a terrifying pressure coming from the 4 of them, and amongst them, a woman with long flowing black hair grabbed my attention. She seemed the center of the 4 people, not just because of her looks, but because of the aura she gave off. She had something beyond her beauty. Something I couldn't quite explain. Just what sort of? You must be Julian. Her lips curled slightly as she glanced at the papers before her. Looking away, she pointed ahead. You must be here for the examination. Please make your way toward the center. I had no choice but to follow along. It only became more evident to me that there was something wrong with the people in front of me when I closed in on them. I couldn't quite describe it. But just standing close to them felt extremely pressuring. As if boulders were being pressed against my back. Even so, I held on to my composure and kept my face firm. But that only lasted a second before I felt my right forearm sting. What's going on? When I looked down, I realized that one of the 4 leaves from the tattoo had lit up. Why was it? As if bewitched, my body moved on its own and my finger hovered over it. I was surprised by the sudden development, but before I could snap out of it, my finger went down. And I pressed it. Huh? The world turned pitch black. All my senses seemed to disappear. Silence pervaded over the pitch-black space with nothing in sight. It felt suffocating. I was stuck in place, floating in this endless darkness that seemed to stretch endlessly. My consciousness was blurry, but I was aware of everything that was happening around me. Was everything I previously saw another vision? Is this what death feels like? It felt lonely. And cold. Ah. The sensation didn't carry on for long. All of a sudden, a current ran through my body, jolting my consciousness awake. When I came to, I realized I could finally move my body again. Even so, my surroundings were still dark. Hello? I tried to speak, but my mouth refused to open. I held on to my composure and pushed away the anxiety and fear that was creeping up on my mind. I didn't let the darkness eat away at my sanity. Not yet. Just as I regained my composure, I spotted a bright light in the distance. A light? It grew brighter by the second, its glow basking me in warmth. It felt comfortable. To the extent that I found my eyes slowly closing in relaxation. When I opened them again, I was stunned by the sight before me and I held my breath. A wheel, 6 colors, and 6 words. Red, anger. Purple, fear. Blue, sadness. Green, surprise. Orange, love. Yellow, joy. A long red arrow pointed upward, currently resting on the color red. Anger. What is this? The 6 basic human emotions? I remember studying this back in psychology class, but why? TRRR. Exclamation mark. The wheel began to spin on its own. What's going on? The colors alternated between red, purple, blue, green, orange, and yellow. They spun and spun and spun. A deep sense of unease held me rooted. My eyes were fixed on the red arrow that remained firm. The wheel continued to spin, and the colors continued to alternate. Gradually, the wheel lost its momentum before finally stopping. Purple. Fear. Now what? My palms were sweaty, and the deep sense of unease that gripped my body seemed even more prominent. Swoosh. And I was right to feel that way. All of a sudden, the ground beneath me quaked. I almost lost my footing, and just as I regained it, I was shocked to see buildings sprouting from the ground beneath. What? I held my mouth. I can speak again? No, not just that. I looked around me. I was surrounded by buildings. No, not quite. They seemed to be ruins. The architecture reminded me of the one from the vision, but they were covered in vines and moss. I couldn't quite get a good grasp of it since it was dark outside. However, from the corner of my eyes, I could make out faint figures in the distance. Shadows? Swoosh. A shiver ran through me as the cold wind caressed my skin. I grew tense, feeling a sensation that was akin to the gentle touch of 2 fingers slowly crawling their way up my arm. Ha. Ha. I felt my breath grow heavy, and as I tried to swallow, I found myself unable to. Something had gripped my throat. Something imaginary. It prevented me from swallowing. Ha. My chest trembled. There's nothing in front of me. So why did I feel so scared? Ha. Ha. I gripped my shirt, slowly wrinkling it in the process. There, I could feel the beat of my heart. It was fast. Bah. Thump. Bah. Thump. And loud. Ha. I was hyperventilating. My palms were sweaty, and sweat trickled down the side of my face. Fear had gripped me. It was slowly consuming me. I could feel it. But why? I need to run. Get away from here. My legs started to move. All thoughts disappeared, and I just ran. Faster and faster. Soon, I found myself sprinting forward. I didn't know why I was acting like this, but if there was something I knew, It was that I needed to run. Get as far away as possible. Yuck. I stumbled several times, scraping my knees in the process, but each time, I'd pick myself back up again and continue to run. I ignored the burning sensation that came with each breath I took. The only thought I had in my mind was that I needed to run. I needed to get away from the shadows. Ha. 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 I looked back from time to time, catching sight of them each time. The distance between us remained constant. Are they not running out of breath as well? I can't keep this up for long. The pain that gripped my lungs intensified. It was as if I was breathing fire. But I had to hold on. Not yet. Not. Bang. My face came smashing against a hard surface. Whack. Ignoring the pain, I looked up. No, A shadow appeared. Its appearance remained a mystery to me. It wobbled in front of me, staring down at me as if I were some sort of prey. Don't. The sense of fear that gripped me intensified. It was almost suffocating. I. The words refused to leave my mouth. And then. Yuck. The shadow reached out for my throat, gripping it tightly. My eyes bulged, and I felt my body grow limp. No. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'll die. The feeling of helplessness under its grip, the steady thump of my heart, the weakness, and the gripping fear, all of it was etched deeply into my mind during those last moments. What I was experiencing. It was real. And then. Crack. I felt my neck snap and the world turned dark again. Only for a brightness to suddenly engulf me. Examinee? Examinee? I slowly raised my head. 4 figures sat not far from where I was standing. They all stared at me with frowns while a young man with blonde hair stood not far from me. Isn't this? Slowly lowering my head, I stared at my right forearm where the tattoo was. It no longer hurt, and it wasn't glowing anymore. But my arm was trembling. The emotions I felt before. They continued to linger over me. I couldn't get rid of the sensation. It felt suffocating. I needed an outlet. An outlet to let everything out. Examinee? Is everything all right? We don't have all day. One of the people seated in front of me, a bulky man with a red beard, raised his eyebrow, pointing at the young man in front of me. Show us what you've got. My feet moved on their own. As if I had finally found what I needed, I moved toward the young man in front of me. He was staring back at me with a frown. As if he was trying to say, what is he doing? But I didn't care. I paid him no mind and continued forward. Before I knew it, I was standing before him. Just as his mouth opened to say something, my hands reached out for his head, grasping both sides solidly. My hands were still shaking but I kept a firm grip on his face. His expression changed. What are you? But I didn't care. Feeling the sides of his face, my mouth parted open as I softly mumbled, fear. My mind blanked from then on. I lost myself in the moment. When I came to, I was standing in the same spot I was before. My hands were no longer shaking, and my mind seemed calmer. Or so I thought. Help. Ha. When I looked down, I was stunned to see the young man from before on the ground. His face was pale, and he held his head with both hands while mumbling things like, I'm sorry. As our eyes met, his expression distorted and his pupils dilated. And no. He hastily moved back. What is going on? A small screen appeared in front of me. That was when I understood. Level 1. Fear, EXP plus 10%. I did this. Chapter 5, Julian Diavinus. Expectations were minimal before his entrance. Behind their desk, the 4 examiners conversed with each other, reviewing the files of the examinees. The overall talent level is lower than last year. It's rather disappointing if I'm being honest. At this rate, the other institutes within the Empire will catch up to us. The man with the red beard mumbled, Herman Chambers, a high wizard, and a man known for his discernible eye for talent. As such, he was put in a position of recruitment for the upcoming year at the Haven Institute. Just by visualizing the flow of mana coming from an examinee's body, he could more or less tell if they were talented or not. From the thickness, and its purity. He'd be able to discern the overall level of the examinee before they even performed. Please bring the next examinee. Compared to last year, the talents were severely lacking. But we've found a couple of little monsters, haven't we? There were a few exceptions. And those few exceptions were far above the norm. I guess you're right. Herman crossed his arms and leaned back on the chair. From the corner of his eyes, He glanced at the woman sitting beside him. She adorned herself in formal attire, exuding a near-perfect aura. Her captivating presence left a profound impact on those around her. The flawless combination of appearance and clothing made her stand out from the rest. Delilah V. Rosenberg. There were no imperfections or voids in her, to the extent that she appeared to embody perfection itself. Elegance seamlessly permeated her every action, word, and facial expression, defining her entire being. She was an unreachable being to many. Apprentice at 18. Master Mage at 19. High Wizard at 21. Archwizard at 24. And one of the Empire's 7 monarchs at 27. Many foresaw her as the future of the Empire, destined to fill a position that had remained vacant for centuries, the most formidable mage among them all. The Zenith. How can someone like her work here? Such a question stumped many, Herman included, but whenever someone asked, all she'd return was an empty smile. She wasn't a woman of many emotions, but when she did show emotions, one felt chills. Our next examinee should be from a barony. Her crisp and clean tone rang in the room. It lacked substance and yet seemed to exude pressure at the same time. Julian Dacre of Venus. She mumbled a name, almost chewing on it as her eyes lingered over the document in front of her. Talent. Elemental and emotive. Emotive? Herman raised his brow and picked up the document in front of him. Indeed, he has talent in the emotive field. His expectations diminished. It wasn't that he hated emotive mages or looked down on them. But it's tough. Muttering with crossed arms and a dismissive shake of her head, Catherine Riley Graham, a middle-aged woman with long flowing brown hair, expressed her thoughts. An emotive mage deals with the manipulation of emotion. It's not a rare talent. But, pursing her lips, she halted mid-sentence, allowing for another voice to complete the thought. One might lose themselves if they immerse themselves too much in the study of emotions. That's right. The emotive field was a dangerous field. To study emotions, understand them, one had to immerse themselves in them. Immerse yourself too much, and you might end up losing sight of yourself. I've seen my fair share of talented ones lose their minds trying to further their path. It's unfortunate. Really unfortunate. Well, at least he's talented in the elemental field. Curse magic? Not a bad field. There were no bad elements. Only bad people. Closely examining the paper in front of him, the door to the room opened. A young man in his late teens entered. You must be Julian. Delilah spoke, her crisp and clean voice ringing throughout the room. His appearance grabbed the attention of all present. He's handsome, but disappointing. Herman's first impression of Julian was one of disappointment. His mana flow is irregular. The density is light and he doesn't seem to have control over it. Was he really a noble? As if he wasn't the only one who thought this, Catherine mumbled, seems like this one is a bit of a bust. Disappointing considering that he's a noble. Herbert Newberman, sitting on Herman's right, shared similar thoughts with her. His mana flow is all over the place. At first glance, he doesn't seem to know how to properly utilize mana. What a rough batch. In the mind of the examiners, Julian seemed to have come in vain. His performance was going to be one that they'd need to erase from their minds. But if there was one thing to take note of, it was his demeanor. The way he carried himself. His expressionless face, and calm even steps. It seemed to exude boundless confidence. An overconfident idiot? Well, whatever. Let's get this over with. I've seen worse. Herman nudged the young man that stood in front of them. Jason, go test him. He was a first year, or more like second year now. Cadet. He wasn't exactly the most talented cadet, but to test new examinees he was good enough. Yes, sir. Jason began to move, but just as he had taken a step forward, his face changed. So did that of all the examiners. What is he doing? Is he checking his pulse? What sort of nonsense is this? With a blank expression and finger pressed against his forearm, Julian stared ahead. He seemed out of it. His face was blank. Like that of an empty sheet of paper. What is this guy doing? Examinee? Examinee? Herman called out for him several times until he snapped out of it. Ah? Examinee? Is everything all right? We don't have all day. He irritably pointed at Jason, show us what you've got. Just as Herman pointed at Jason, a sudden change occurred with Julian. His pupils dilated. His face paled, and his arms began to tremble. His sudden change took everyone aback. Julian's eyes trembled, darting around hastily with an air of desperation. He seemed to transform all of a sudden, a complete difference from how he previously was. His shoulders shrank and his breathing quickened. Ha! 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 Everyone could feel the rhythm of his breath. It was getting faster with each breath. He seemed to be the embodiment of a certain emotion. What emotion? Ah! It soon became clear to everyone. Fear. He had started to embody fear. Herman felt a chill run down his body. Not just him, but the other examiners too. What are you? Julian walked up to Jason. Perhaps taken aback by the situation, he wasn't able to react on time. Julian's hands came pressing against his skull, squeezing almost. Ah! A scream shook the room. It pierced through it and reverberated loudly in the ears of everyone present. Suddenly, everyone in the room was motionless, not just Herman, Herbert, and Catherine, but Delilah too. The impact of Julian's action was just that powerful. With one single action, he left everyone in the room frozen. Ah! No! Ah! I don't want to die, no! It was intense, and one could vividly feel the fear that Jason was feeling. Goosebumps. Herman felt goosebumps. Ah! Thump. Jason fell lifelessly to the floor. Shaking uncontrollably, he clutched his head while writhing on the floor. Saliva spilled from his mouth. Help! Despite his cries, none of the examiners moved. All eyes were fixed on the young man that stood before them. What was in front of them was the embodiment of someone who tread a path hardly anyone took. Recalling, Herman mumbled out loud. For one to understand an emotion, one must experience it. To display such fear, one must experience it. Everyone in the room was well versed and knew this much. They had traveled all over the continent and met many emotive mages. From there, they learned of the harshness that one who treads such a path must endure. To experience fear, one must relentlessly chase after it. Many failed in their paths, dying in the middle of training, or simply not being able to understand the emotion. And yet, what sort of gruesome training did he undergo to display such emotion? Julian was able to do what many couldn't. He was far from perfection, but to be able to do this at such an age. Just how harsh has he been on himself? Herman's evaluation of Julian underwent a drastic change. Not only is he able to perfectly portray fear, but he also seems to have mastered the state of immersion. A state many emotive mages chased after. A state where one could separate reality and immersion. Was that why he checked his pulse beforehand? To check his condition before immersion? A monster. He was a total monster. If I may ask. Catherine was the first to truly break the silence that took hold of the room, briefly glancing at the trembling Jason on the ground before settling her gaze over to Julian. What sort of training did you do to be able to do this? And is it only limited to fear? Her question was met with silence as Julian stood still. He then lowered his head and shook his head. Ah! Was it so bad that he doesn't want to talk about it? The judges felt their expressions harden. And finally, Delilah, who had been quiet the entire time, with her gaze seemingly never detaching from Julian, opened her mouth to speak. You're dismissed. We'll let you know your results after we've evaluated all the examinees. Julian nodded his head and calmly walked out of the room. It was as if he hadn't done anything worth praising over. When he left, Herman and the others looked at her. Why did you let him go like that? We were still busy. Take a look at the floor. Ah. And that was when everyone finally realized. Ah. Please help me. Ah. He's in no state to continue with the examination. Tell someone to replace him and send him to the infirmary. For now, we'll take a break. But I know what you want to say. Delilah raised her hand to stop the other examiners from speaking. You want to know more about him, right? When Herman and the others nodded, Delilah turned to look at the door where Julian had left. Her gaze told 1,000 words. Herman could tell. Like the rest of them, her interest had been piqued. Without a doubt, she wanted to know what everyone in the room wanted to know. A question none of them dared to ask. To what extent had he immersed himself? Everything was a blur to me. From the moment I poured out everything to what unfolded next, my mind felt shrouded in a perpetual fog. I couldn't think straight. What sort of training did you do to be able to do this? And is it only limited to fear? My sole focus was getting out of here. I could feel it from deep within me. I still hadn't let it all out. It was lingering within my mind, slowly creeping its way up. I need to leave. So, then. You're dismissed. We'll let you know your results after we've evaluated all the examinees. When the chance presented itself, I spared no time and left. Coming out, I felt the stares of everyone in the hall fall on me, but yet again, I could pay them no mind. I need to find somewhere safe. A bathroom, or room. I can't. My steps faltered momentarily. I felt something rising from my stomach. Swallowing back, I forced myself forward. Move. I pushed everyone in front of me away and continued forward. Hey! I didn't care about their protests. A bathroom. A room. Something. I continued to walk. I didn't care to look where I was. I only stopped when I found a room. Glancing around, I entered. It was a small room. Ha. Ha. And most importantly, empty. Blurg. The contents I so desperately held back came out all at once. My vision fogged, and I hunched over. My stomach clenched with pain as I could feel the sweat on my forehead. Ha-h. I clenched my shirt, feeling the beat of my heart in the process. It was fast. Really fast. I took deep breaths to calm myself down. To calm my beating heart, but it wouldn't stop. Ah. Ah. The fear that had gripped me moments before had come back to haunt me again. I couldn't stop shaking. It was as if something had possessed me. Ugh. I could feel it. Clearer than ever. I was being consumed. Chapter 6, Julian D. Venus, 5. What does it feel like to be consumed by fear? Ha. Ha. Small, shallow, and repetitive breaths coming out of the mouth. Bah. Thump. Bah. Thump. A rising heartbeat that drummed in the mind. A trembling body. Sweaty palms. Shit. It felt like shit. Ha. Regardless of what I tried, the trembling wouldn't stop. I tried to take deep breaths but struggled, occasionally inhaling too deeply and choking on my saliva. Ugh. It was a pathetic sight. I knew it. But, ha. I couldn't stop it. It was slowly consuming every part of me. Creeping toward the deepest parts of my mind. I was able to hold on to my composure up until this point. But now that I was alone, I was struggling. Let this stop. Let this stop. At this point, death didn't seem too bad. But, I grit my teeth. No. Such a pathetic death. Not again. And not when I still didn't know what was going on. I wanted to know at least that much. Who was I? And why was I here? Dying in such a moment was the last thing I wanted. Therefore, I continued to grit my teeth and endure the fear that was taking hostage of my mind. My hands were fiercely clenching at my shirt as my legs wiggled on the ground. For some reason, my body would reflexively avoid the puke on the ground during my struggle. The thought of touching the puke seemed more repulsive than the fear that was clouding my mind. It was as if it was ingrained in my body. Just let this pass. The situation seemed helpless, but I could slowly feel it. The sensation was dying away. Slowly, but surely I knew I could regain sight of myself. I just had to. Endure. I bit my shirt and pulled at my hair. Cack. That was when I noticed something. The pain. The pain appeared to take away from the fear I was experiencing. I took advantage of that and bit on my forearm. The sensation of my teeth digging into my skin eased many of my symptoms, and despite the intense pain, it helped me finally achieve a sense of calm. Pain. Pain I could deal with. For the first time, I was able to take a deep breath. My hands were still trembling but my mind was clear. I glanced down at my arm, observing the intricate red patterns weaving across it, converging at the tip of my finger before eventually trailing down toward the ground. Drip. Drip. Red stained the ground. Ignoring it, I continued to take deep and even breaths. Slowly, I was regaining control over my body. Enough to be able to stand up. I wasn't sure how long had passed when I was finally able to be myself again. But it didn't matter. Right now, all I wanted to do was figure out my situation. Where is this place? Walking around the room, I traced my finger over a wooden desk. It felt real to the touch. Although I already knew, I did it to make sure. None of this felt real to me. A medieval-style setting, strange powers and visions, a gray-eyed man. The pieces started to put themselves in my head and a conclusion drew up in my mind. One that I struggled to come to terms with. I was in the game, wasn't I? Rise of the Three Calamities. There wasn't much that I knew about it since I'd never played it before, but from what I was told by my brother, it was a very popular game. Why? For what reason was I here? And I turned to face the nearest window. It was dark outside so it was hard to see outside, but my focus was elsewhere. Toward my reflection. With deep hazel eyes, black hair, and a chiseled jawline, he appeared to epitomize perfection solely through his looks. I raised my hands to touch my face. This is me? I found it hard to believe, but as I pinched my cheek, The reality seemed undeniable. Crazy. This is crazy. Even though this seemed to be my reality, I still found it hard to believe. Creak, my head flicked. A familiar figure stood by the door. He stood motionless, staring at me with his cold gray eyes. Not feeling so well? His tone seemed calm, but all I felt was chills. Step. The wooden floor creaked under his step. A strange tension lingered over the room as he stepped forward. His eyes briefly paused on the puke on the ground, then settling back to me. Step. He took another step, inching closer to where I was. His every movement and action felt suffocating, as if he was dragging me deeper and deeper into the water. I thought about running but realized it was futile. There was no running from this man. And I didn't feel like running. Step. He stood in front of me. His eyes were intense, closely reminding me of the ones he had in the vision. When his sword pierced me. What did he? Shiving. My neck felt cold. It all happened so fast that I had no time to react. His mouth parted slightly. Who are you? My neck stung as the blade sunk slightly into my skin. A wet trail traced down my neck. You're not him. Who are you? He seemed sure of himself, as if he was certain that I wasn't the person whom this body belonged to. And he was right. I wasn't. Strangely, staring at the sharp tip of the sword that was pointed at me, I didn't feel a thing. Would you look at that? After all that fear, when the time came for me to feel fear, I didn't feel it. It seemed to pale in comparison with what I'd experienced back in the examination room. I cocked my head slightly. What makes you think that? My voice came out much calmer than I thought it had come out in such a situation. His lips pulled upwards. He wouldn't have reacted the way that you did had he been in a similar position. Is that so? How would he have reacted? By cursing me. I thought back to the vision. He didn't strike me to be that type of guy. I still tried. Get your fucking hands off of me. No, not quite. Still missing something. As in? Try, get your fucking hands off of me, dirty bastard. That's how he'd reply. I see. Quite informative. I gripped the blade that was attached to my neck and tried to pull it away. Through my gritted teeth, I spat, get your fucking hands off of me, dirty bastard. Better. Unfortunately, the blade wouldn't budge. Was the difference in our strength that vast? Don't bother. I'm a knight. Our strength difference is not something that you can bridge with that body of yours. I see. I let go and stared at my hand. It was bleeding. Still, it helped me calm down even more. My heart was no longer beating as fast as it was before, and my mind felt a lot clearer. We stood face to face with each other, neither one of us speaking. He was the first one to break the silence. I heard an interesting rumor. I stood still and listened to his words. There was nothing I could do at the moment. The powers I displayed before, I knew nothing about them nor how to use them. I had been trying the entire time. Right now, I was just a normal human. An amazing examinee appeared. From the rumors, he stunned all the judges in his performance. So much that they had to pause the selection process. He looked at me with a meaningful look. That was you, wasn't it? Ah. It then finally dawned on me. The reason why I was still alive up to this point and why he still hadn't killed me yet. He was. I glanced at his hand. Wary of me. I wonder. I kept things short, slowly pulling my lips into a smirk. And what would you do with that information? The grip of his sword tightened, and the blade dug deeper into my neck. I suppressed the pain and forced myself to not react. I hate to say this, but this. I lightly tapped the blade on my neck. It isn't scaring me. Fear was the least of my worries. His eyes grew more intense. Ah, right there. He was faltering. I raised my right hand. It was stained red as blood dripped down onto my forearm. It was quite the sight. Also why I chose this hand. All I did was touch him. I didn't expect him to react the way that he did. It's true. I really didn't. I wonder. I looked at the man in front of me and brought my hand to a close. How would you react if I tried that on you? The man that stood before him was not the young master he knew. His demeanor, his actions, and most importantly, his calmness. Leon was sure of it. He was not Julian Diavinus. Having spent enough time with him, he was certain of it. He had first noticed His lips pulled into a smirk. Taunting him, almost. Mocking him. And what would you do with that information? Leon further tightened his grasp of the sword and dug the sword deeper into Julian's neck. It was a threat. No reaction? One that didn't seem to be effective. He was merely standing there, And yet, he felt so intimidating. Why was that? I hate to say this, but this. With light movements, he tapped the tip of his blade. It isn't scaring me. Leon remained silent, the muscles of his body tensing. Then, drip, drip. Julian raised his blood-soaked hand. All I did was touch him. He voiced out in a low tone. His words seemed to describe the situation. Probably what had happened back at the examination room. But, I didn't expect him to react the way that he did. To Leon, his words seemed more like, "Hey, how would you react if I tried that on you?" Warning. Chapter 7, Black Star. The tension in the room felt stifling. His eyes felt intense. As if they could swallow me whole at any second. Devour me. But I never looked away. I knew I couldn't look away. Looking away meant showing weakness. I couldn't do that. Not when I knew he'd kill me for it. Drip. 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 Blood continued to drip down on the ground. Softly disrupting the silence that seemed eager to envelop the room. Then. "What is your goal?" He asked me a question that I couldn't find the answer to. Goal. What is my goal? I'd like to know that as well. Suddenly thrust into this situation, I was still struggling to come to terms with everything that had happened to me. Why was I here? Who was the one responsible for all of this? And why me? For now, my goal was to find answers. The reasoning behind my situation. And what the end goal of all of this was. What I want is answers. I repeated. Sort of as an affirmation for myself. A goal was important. It was so that I wouldn't fall astray in the future. Answers? His brows knit and the pressure that bore down on my neck alleviated. He seemed to be in deep thought, and when he looked back at me, he asked, "What sort of answers are you looking for?" Who am I? Where am I? Who are you? What is this place? Why am I here? What was the goal in putting me here? I threw one question after another. His expression gradually changed with each question, and before I knew it, the sword was no longer at my neck. For the first time, his eyes didn't seem that intense. You didn't possess his body by choice? So body possession was possible? No, I shook my head. I'm just as clueless as you are in regards to this matter. I wouldn't be having such a hard time if I knew. He stood quietly, perhaps contemplating my words. In the meantime, I walked toward the nearest chair and sat down. I felt lightheaded. With all the blood loss and puking, I was in no state to stand. I had just taken a seat when something flashed in my vision. Level 1. Fear, EXP plus 0.5%. A familiar notification. I felt like laughing and my lips gently pulled up. What sort of joke was this? The room grew tense again. Turning my head, the same two gray eyes were staring back at me. He seemed strangely stiff. I won't bite. How do I know you're not lying? Lying? I rested my cheek on my propped-up fist. Beats me. And shrugged. I really couldn't do anything if he didn't believe me. Had I been in his position, I too wouldn't have believed myself. Not only was I unaware of how things worked in this world, but the blood loss was making it hard for me to keep a clear mind. But even so, under such circumstances, staring at the man in front of me, I understood something. You already know I'm not lying. Somehow. Some way. I had a feeling he already knew I wasn't lying. How? The expression he was making. It was rather easy to read. His lack of words served as a silent confirmation to me. There was something he wasn't telling me. But I didn't push for an answer. I couldn't afford to. Keeping myself level-headed was starting to prove difficult. I couldn't afford to. Keeping myself level-headed was starting to prove difficult. What now? What are you going to do? Hearing his voice, I lowered my head to stare at him. I don't know. I wasn't in a state to contemplate. Plus, I knew too little of the world. I needed to know more before making a decision. Haste made waste. I see. He seemed satisfied with that answer. Once again, the room fell silent. I took that moment to close my eyes and rest. But just as I closed them, I heard his voice again. Julian was arrogant. Not very talented. And someone who hated commoners with every ounce of his being. Is that so? Sounded like an amazing guy. The way you act is too different. When the moment arrives for you to encounter someone connected to the previous Julian, the fact that you're not him will easily be exposed. It wasn't hard for me. How hard would it be for others? I figured that much. But... He dragged on his sentence, enough to capture my attention. But? I can help you. His tone lowered. Let me use you. And I opened my eyes. Our gazes met. In exchange, I'll let you use me. The Haven Institute, better known as Haven, was the most prestigious and renowned academy in the Empire. As such, the admissions were extremely challenging. Fitting for an institute of such renown. With such a reputation, there was no social segregation between commoners and nobles. There was, however, a consensus amongst the staff. And that was that commoners were not equal to nobles. But it wasn't for silly reasons such as the purity of their bloodline or background. It had to do more with the Empire's law. Commoners were only allowed to practice mana from the age of 17. To maintain their authority within the Empire, the royal family, the Megrael family, strictly forbade the common people from practicing mana until they hit a certain age. The same was true for nobles as well. In contrast to the commoners, individuals of nobility were permitted to practice mana at a younger age. However, there was an age restriction that varied based on their noble status. Only the direct lineage of the Megrael family was allowed to practice mana since birth. It was therefore normal for those of the Megrael lineage to rank first whenever a descendant entered Haven. And yet, you're saying there's someone better fit for the top rank? Not just one, but two? Flip. A black glove delicately turned a page. The motion, though simple, conveyed an oddly graceful fluidity. This will be a first for our institute. For a lower-end noble to be elected as the Black Star. I wonder if there's ever been such a precedent in the past. And not just one candidate like that, but to have two of them. The Black Star. A title given to the top entrant of each academic year. Without failure, each of them ultimately evolved into an influential figure within the Empire. It was an important position. It has to be done. A crisp voice replied. The tone sounded strangely calm. As if the one who spoke was dealing with a trivial matter. But it wasn't such a trivial matter. At least, Atlas didn't think so. The position didn't just symbolize status. It also served as an index. Someone that the cadets had to look up to and strive to become. A goal. Atlas Megrael sighed as he removed his glasses, unveiling his yellow eyes, a distinctive symbol of his direct lineage with the Megrael family. If he can't handle the pressure that comes with being the Black Star, I'm afraid that won't be necessary. Delilah glanced at the two profiles in front of her. She thought back to what had happened back in the examination room. Tap. Her finger slid over to one of the profiles. He's not someone that will feel pressure from something as trivial as that. She was sure of it. After all, she had seen him in person. Slide, and she pushed his profile forward. The Black Star. Julian Dacre of Venus. It can only be him. Shah. Cold water trickled down from above, each droplet stinging upon contact with my skin. My heart raced wildly, yet I remained motionless beneath the frigid stream. I clung to my composure, letting the sensation engulf me as I let my body be consumed by the cold. Beneath the showerhead, an unusual tranquility befell me, my mind emptying. In that brief moment, I savored a small taste of freedom, however fleeting it may have been. My neck and forearms stung. But under the cold of the water, the pain seemed meaningless. Click. The fleeting sense of freedom disappeared as soon as the shower came to an end, and the weight of reality crashed back down upon me. Use me. It had only been an hour since I parted ways with him, and yet it felt as if it was just a few moments ago since we had that conversation. I wonder if I made the right choice. I studied the reflection before me. Every aspect appeared meticulously crafted, from facial symmetry to eye depth and jawline definition. It was flawless. Yet, I loathed it. Emmett Rowe. I muttered aloud for myself to hear, my hands silently grasping the edges of the sink. 24 years old. Male. Salesman. Brother, and patient at the Sandboroughs Hospital. That was my real name, my real identity, and who I was. I couldn't forget this. I mustn't forget this. This world wasn't mine, nor was this body. Both were foreign to me. This world didn't belong to me, just as I didn't belong to it. I needed an answer. A reason to keep on this facade. And for that. Shah. I turned on the sink, calmly washing my face as the water dripped from my hair. I'll do anything. Chapter 8, Black Star, 2. The match has concluded. The victor is Aoife Megrael. Woo. The crowd erupted in cheers. Their cheers rained down on the platform where an expressionless figure stood. Cascading down her back, her red hair complemented the most striking feature, her yellow pupils. Aoife Megrael. The future Black Star, and one of the most promising new entrants at Haven. Faced with the cheers, Aoife simply disregarded them and stared down at her opponent, Jordana. Disappointing. Her cold voice descended on the young girl, passing down her evaluation of her. Jordana lowered her head in shame. "I apologize." "Don't be. This was the expected outcome." Aoife extended her hand, which Jordana took. "This was the expected outcome. You're not my opponent. I'm afraid that with your current strength, you won't find a single opponent in your age group. Not even in Haven." Aoife had no words of rebuttal. It was the hard truth of the matter. Her talent, coupled with the gap in years she had to practice, made her someone who was on a level that the regular cadets couldn't reach. That was what she believed, and everyone else believed. So then. Letter of admission. We congratulate Cadet Aoife Calmegrail for their admission to the Haven Institute. We are proud and delighted to have you join us in our program. It is with great honor that we invite you to join us. Cadet rank, 3. Letter of admission, 3rd rank? What sort of situation was this? Is there a mistake? When she confronted her cousin about it, Atlas, his response to her was a clear-cut no. Casually flipping through the pages of the book in his hand, he didn't even spare her a glance. "There are 2 cadets that we deem to be more talented than you." "More talented? Then." "Julian Dacre of Venus," she said finally. For the first time in a considerable while, Aoife's composed expression faltered. She opened her mouth, but the words refused to leave it. As though something was stuck, all she could do was move her mouth. That was until. "He's the Black Star," she whispered. "And, the one we deem to be more fitting of the role than you." Speech, huh? I looked at the letter in front of me. It was given to me this morning by a member of the Haven Institute staff. It went on to say, "Congratulations on your admission to Haven. We're proud to announce your entry to the Institute." It was a long letter. But the key important points were, Black Star, and speech. A week had passed since the examination had taken place. I was now a lot more knowledgeable about my situation. Therefore, I knew exactly what the Black Star symbolized. It symbolized excellence and perfection. A goal for the other cadets to follow. All of which I wasn't. I extended my hand and a faint purple magic circle formed. DZZ. It shattered within seconds of me activating it. Still nothing. There was magic in this world. That was a fact I was made aware of quite early on. And apparently, I was talented at curse magic. Julian, that was it. Me? Seems like you've still not figured out how to properly use mana. I continued to stare at my hand and ignored the voice that reached me from the end of the room. I concentrated all my attention on my hand. A warm current flushed from the center of my abdomen. One that I guided until the very tips of my fingers. In my mind, a vivid image took shape, and peculiar runes hung in the air, gradually arranging themselves within the purple circle that hovered above my fingertips. Almost. Sweat formed on my forehead. It trickled down my nose. Stopping at the tip. The runes set themselves within the circle. A faint glow surfaced on its edges. Yes. A little more. I was close. I could feel it. I was. DZZ. The circle shattered. All the progress disappeared in an instant. Hands of Malady, EXP plus 0.01%. It wasn't an unexpected outcome. It had been like this for the entire week. But it's frustrating. Trying over and over and over again, with little to no progression. I thought that with enough time and practice, I'd see some improvement, but in the week that I started practicing, the only result I received was failure. Drip. Something wet trickled down from my nose. I used my sleeve to wipe it, only for it to be stained and red. That was when I realized. Blood. You're overworking yourself. Finally, I looked up. There, standing by the entrance of the door to my room was Leon. His gray eyes were as intense as ever. You're trying to learn curse magic, right? So that you wouldn't look suspicious when the time comes. Right. No, not really. It was part of the reason. But it was mainly because learning any other magic would prove to be too hard of a task for me. The current me that was. Here you go. Leon walked up to me to hand me a piece of paper. This is the speech I prepared for you. You won't have to worry about practicing it because it's pretty straightforward. Plus, nobody will suspect a thing if you say it exactly as it's written. I see. I reached out to take it when he pulled back. I was taken aback. What are you doing? On second thought, I'll give it to you later. He pointed at my nose. Clean yourself up. You're in no state to think about the speech. Right. I reached for the nearest tissue to clean up my nose. It was still leaking blood. As expected, I had been practicing a little too hard. Leon stood quietly beside me, closely observing me. That was until. "I'll take my leave. We'll meet before the speech." He decided to leave. Wait. The speech. He left before I had the chance to ask him for the paper. Shit. I stuffed a tissue up my nose. He's still wary of me. In the week I spent with Leon, he always seemed on edge around me. I knew exactly why he was like that, and I took full advantage of it. I don't have much time. But I knew that I couldn't keep the facade for much longer. It wouldn't take too long for him to understand that he could kill me with a thought. That was why I was so desperate for progression. Only through power would I be able to keep myself alive. I should go. I checked my watch. It was almost time for me to give my speech. It wasn't as though I was nervous. I was far from it. But what then? My goal was to find answers. And despite a week having passed, the only thing I managed to gain was even more questions. This was indeed the world of Rise of the Three Calamities. Although I had never played the game, the situation became clear to me after experiencing the world for the past week. In the week, I continuously thought about leaving this place. The vision that preceded my arrival here depicted me getting killed by a long blade, with 3 women in pursuit. Was the vision the Julian of the future, or was it me of the future? Even if it was, how long did I have before Leon killed me? Regardless of the outcome, it seems like every move I make leads to my death. For such a future, wasn't the appropriate answer to just run away? Leave this place? Surely, I'd be able to live a good life if I did. As if. The thought of not knowing why I was here seemed to eat at me more than my desire to live. I guess, having already died once, I placed less importance on my life than the truth. That's not all. My eyes wandered back to my arm. Turning it, a 4-leaved clover entered my sight. One of the leaves lit up. A feeling of dread welled up within the depths of my mind as my gaze remained fixed on the leaf. It was the same leaf from last time. It reminded me of the time during the examination. The leaf was the reason why I was able to become the Black Star. I still didn't know what it did. By the time I woke up the next day, it had lit up again. I hadn't touched it since. The lingering after effects of the situation were still affecting me. Was my mind even capable of withstanding such intense emotions again? I wasn't quite sure. But if there was one thing that I knew. Emotions. Anger, sadness, joy, love, surprise, fear, I won't be consumed. Rustle. I donned a black blazer and black leather gloves to hide the wounds on my hands. Making sure that it all fit, I proceeded to head out of the door. Not now, not ever. Chapter 9, Black Star, 3. Rustle. A fluttering of the clothes. Ha. The small wisps of water vapor swirling in the air before vanishing. And the cold chill that pressed against the cheeks early in the morning. Indeed, this was real. I was once again reminded of that. Took you long enough. Waiting for me outside the residence was Leon. Clad in a matching blazer, a sword at his hip, he casually brushed his hair. We'll be late if we don't hurry. Right. The two of us walked on the empty streets. Tack. The gentle click of our heels echoed in the air. He walked by my side, maintaining a respectable distance. That was his duty as Julian's designated knight. The city we were in was called Lens. It was the nearest city to Haven and our temporary residence. Currently, being early in the morning, there weren't many people outside. The cobblestone streets were empty. It was just the two of us. We're here. We didn't walk far. Our destination was merely a few minutes away from the residence, located near the city center. Unlike the streets, this place was packed with people. Leon handed me a small paper. Here's your ticket. Thanks. One that I took. Rather than a knight, secretary seemed more fitting for him. Wow. I stopped in my tracks to stare ahead. I was still having a hard time getting used to the sight before me. A means of transportation unfitting for a world like this. One that seemed to function even better than the locomotives in the modern age. This really is a game. Did you say something? Nothing. I boarded the train, making my way toward my cabin. 8:25, right here. It was rather spacious and had a wide window for me to look at. From there, I could see the scenery outside. The lush trees, the tall mountains in the distance, and the orange glow that dyed the sky. It felt peaceful. How is it? Is it to your satisfaction, young master? Leon's voice brought me back. I turned to glance at him. You can drop the act when it's just us. The whole young master thing felt rather uncomfortable. I wasn't Julian. He didn't have to call me that. I'd rather not. But he seemed insistent on calling me that. I wasn't going to force him. There were other things that I needed to pay more attention to. Like, how would Julian conduct himself if he were to give a speech? The speech. As Leon said, I needed to act closely as the previous Julian acted. In this world, possessing someone else's body wasn't merely a fantasy. Many were capable of such a feat. Some for looks, and others for longevity reasons. Unless I acted like Julian, then there was a chance someone might find out. I couldn't allow that to happen. Here's the speech. Thankfully, I wasn't completely unprepared. Having discussed it with Leon, he already had a speech prepared for me. Ah, thanks. I opened the paper to see the speech. A quick scan and I didn't see anything wrong with it. Is this good enough? I could have prepared the speech by myself. Things would have probably been easier for me if that was the case. Maybe? Maybe? I just didn't want to take any risks. I chose to leave the subject there. It didn't seem like my words were getting through to him. He doesn't trust me at all. Noted. I shifted my attention back to the speech. It wasn't long and also wasn't hard to memorize. I could learn this. While I immersed myself in the speech, the train started to move. The pistons roared and the train picked up speed. I naturally turned my head to look at the window. Unknowingly, the paper in my hand wrinkled. Rustle. Finally. I was walking into the Devil's Den, an exquisite appearance that stood out from the rest. Clad in clothing that highlighted his lean and muscular physique, his appearance imprinted itself in the minds of all present. He strode with measured steps, reaching the center of the podium. The Black Star. Julian Dacre of Venus. He's here. A fact Aoife was made aware of the moment his name was called out. Her gaze traced over his body, his every action, movement, expression. He was the one who took the title away from her. Someone her cousin in the Institute's board seemed enamored with. And the one that stood above her. It's a pleasure to be standing here amongst all of you. His tone felt rather flat. It lacked any highs and lows, sounding rather indifferent. It is with great honor that I find myself in this position. As if he didn't mean the words that he was saying. That was what Aoife thought at first. However, all of a sudden, Julian's gaze shifted. Many of you stand at the very peak of the empire. Proud sons of heaven. It turned sharp. Everywhere you go, people will praise you. Call you the elites of the empire. Like that of a sharpened blade. Someone that should be worshipped. He suddenly paused, and just faintly, Aoife noticed a change. His lips. They were pulled into a smile. Remember. And as his gaze swept the hall, he slowly muttered, I stand above you. The entire hall fell into a state of silence. Aoife's expression underwent a small change. She looked around her. All the cadets wore similar expressions. One of utter shock which soon morphed into anger. The previously quiet hall started to heat up. What did he just say? Who is this arrogant bastard? Did he just say that? Aoife took in the sight around her. The disorder and chaos that was slowly taking shape. The flustered and shocked looks of the professors. The angered looks of the cadets. And the stoic, yet arrogant look of the Black Star who stood at the center of it all. This isn't right. Aoife tore her gaze away from the chaos happening around her and closed her eyes. As expected. Her fists slowly started to clench. Julian Dacre of Venus. He wasn't fit to be the Black Star. The weight of over 100 eyes weighed heavily on me. My every action seemed to be closely scrutinized. From the way I walked, the way I looked, and the way I spoke. All of it was assessed. But even so, I didn't feel nervous. I had been a salesman in my past life. Things like this weren't a problem for me. I tapped on the small ball in front of me. It's a pleasure to be standing here amongst all of you. It appeared to be a microphone. My voice echoed throughout the hall, reaching the ears of all present. The gazes were now truly on me. Many of you stand at the very peak of the empire. Proud sons of heaven. Someone that should be worshipped. But that wasn't the reason why I followed the speech. But I stand above you. I almost laughed after saying that line. Taking in the expressions of all those in the hall, I almost regretted not having a phone. It wasn't a pretty sight. Amidst the glares of disgust, hatred, and scorn directed towards me, I chose to stand my ground next to the podium, taking in everything that was directed my way. Leon's reasoning behind the speech was that he believed this was what the previous Julian would have said. I didn't doubt it. But that wasn't the reason why I went through with it. If I wanted to, I could have said something different. But I didn't. What sort of joke is this? All of a sudden, one of the cadets stood up from their seat and shouted, Are you seriously supposed to be the Black Star? I refuse to believe someone like you can be our top ranker. I request a duel. Ah, yes. This was what I wanted. A cliché scenario. Me too. Julian Dacre of Venus. I request a duel. What came after the first was the second, and then the third. Fight me. The entire hall became heated with several cadets standing up and challenging me on the spot. While some appeared to be influenced by a few instigators, a significant number seemed genuinely eager to fight me. Yeah, this is it. It was the effect that I desired to achieve. My time was limited. I needed to get stronger. And for that, I needed a target on my back. Pressure. A comfortable environment wouldn't shape me into a stronger individual. What I craved was pressure, and the best way to intensify the pressure on myself was to provoke every first year in attendance. It was bound to happen anyway. I wasn't naive enough to think nobody would challenge me the moment I entered the institute. It was bound to happen. I only hurried that process. Only this way could I force myself to improve faster. I could already feel the weight of my actions on my shoulders. It weighed heavily on them, but it was necessary. Growth can only be achieved through struggle. And what better way to make myself struggle than this? That's right. This had to be done. For the sake of my growth. I'll do anything. Chapter 10, Black Star, 4. It felt like I was standing on the cliff's edge, my feet inches from the abyss that stood behind me, ready to swallow me the moment I moved. That was how I described my current situation. One that I brought myself in. Yeah, this is it. I stared at my hands. They were trembling slightly. I was playing with fire. A deadly fire. But what could I do? There was no way back for me. I had already set my bed. What were the chances of me coming on top if any of the people in front of me challenged me? Realistically speaking, close to zero. I could hardly evoke or control my magic, and my knowledge of the fundamentals was close to zero. Yet, despite all that, I did what I did. It felt almost thrilling. Ha. Crazy. This is fucking crazy. I think I've lost it. But of course, it wasn't as though I did this out of impulse. I knew that the Institute wouldn't allow first years to challenge each other just yet. It was something I learned through Leon and my research. Still, my time was limited. It wouldn't be long before everyone came at me. My back was against the cliff. I could only step forward from this moment forth. Stepping back meant the end of me. Desperation was slowly creeping up on me. I could feel it. There was no backup plan. But it has to be this way. I sought desperation. Desperation pushed people to their limit. To points where they'd normally not go toward. I was now in such a place. You've created quite the stir. Leon appeared. He walked toward me with an air of casualness. The speech had ended up causing a stir, forcing me to leave early. He was probably just coming out of it. You're the one who made the speech. Why does it seem like you're surprised? I didn't think you'd go through with it. And why is that? So he was expecting me to say something else? No. He pursed his lips and shook his head. It's nothing. And why is that? So he was expecting me to say something else? No. He pursed his lips and shook his head. It's nothing. What was up with this guy? Closely looking at him, his expression seemed unusually stiff. As if he was holding himself back. Are you okay? He really didn't look so good. I inched closer to get a better look. But he took a step back. Let's keep things cordial. Cordial? What is this guy on about? No, no. I shook my head and moved closer. Something felt off. I couldn't quite explain it. That's when I finally noticed it. This fucker. I pressed my hand against his shoulder to stop him from moving and tilted my head to get a better look at his face. He was looking away from me. Why was that? You're trying not to laugh, aren't you? No way? This motherfucker. You find the situation amusing? No. Ha. Then why are you looking away? I raised my brow. His shoulders were slightly trembling. KH. You. Julian. I stopped and turned my head. The trembling on my hand stopped, and my expression stiffened. You've changed a lot. A voice reached my ears. She stopped a few meters ahead of me. Her appearance was amongst some of the best I've ever seen. Long flowing purple hair and crystal blue eyes. An image overlapped with hers. One that was filled with nothing but hatred toward myself. It's been a while. Evelyn J. Verlice. This body's childhood friend, and someone who knew Julian extremely well. I hadn't spent the past week doing anything outside of practicing magic. To make sure everything flowed smoothly, I had Leon provide me with details on all important characters related to Julian and their relationship with him. It was why I knew who she was. I see that you've become the Black Star. An empty compliment. Her tone was cold and lacked any form of praise. She was also not looking at me. Her eyes. They seemed to be glued to my hand. The one grasping Leon's shoulder. She softly whispered, "Maybe you haven't changed, after all." Her tone was laced with disappointment. Only that I had no idea what she was talking about. I only pretended to understand her, and her expression pained. "When will you stop?" She couldn't meet my gaze at all. The disappointment seemed to be too much for her to handle. In a situation like this, the only way I could respond was, "Stop what?" "Yeah, right." She smiled weakly. It was as if she expected such an answer from me. "I waited for you. I really did. Even when you changed, I waited. I thought you'd come back to how you normally were." But, stopping herself, she shook her head. Softly, she mumbled in a voice that I could barely hear, "It's not worth it. There's no point." I thought she'd give up from that point, but yet again, her eyes fell on my hand. And then toward Leon. "Why do you let him treat you like this?" Leon stood quietly. He seemed to be chewing on his words, seemingly thinking about how to respond. She spoke before he could. "I know you're loyal to the family, but why let yourself be treated like this? You're better than this." "It's none of that." Leon cut her off mid-sentence. Her expression froze. "Do you take me for some sort of fool?" "I saw all of it." "Saw all of it?" I couldn't help but speak out. "What did you see?" I struggled to understand what she was trying to say. "Seriously?" Her expression seemed scornful. "It was obvious what you were trying to do. How many times do you think I've seen the same scene in the past? You were using him as your test dummy, as usual." "Test dummy?" I looked at Leon, who looked back at me. His expression didn't say much, but a subtle nod told me all that I needed to know. "Ah. So that's how it is." I was just about to speak, when all of a sudden, Leon spoke. "It isn't the case this time." Her eyes widened. "You're still defending him? Even after he told me a joke?" Both me and Evelyn were taken aback. "A joke?" I looked at Leon, who looked back at me. What is this guy on about? Though his expression seemed indifferent, his eyes seemed to say, "Roll with it." Roll with it? A joke? I felt Evelyn's gaze on me. She was staring at me with a face of utter disappointment. I didn't understand why she was looking at me like that, but I felt like I needed to play along. So, yeah, I did. All it brought was silence from her. One that she broke shortly after. "Do I look that easy to you?" I felt my skin crawl all of a sudden. If before she looked at me in disappointment, she was now looking at me with scorn. "I'm seriously asking. Do you take me for a joke?" "No." Ha. Her expression was overcome with distraught. I don't know why, but I felt like I needed to do something. So I did. "Why don't they play poker in the jungle?" Evelyn seemed to have been about to say something when her mouth closed. I used a chance to say, "Too many cheetahs." Regret came quickly. My face burned, but I kept it from changing. On the outside, it was as if I had said something trivial. But Evelyn didn't seem to think of it the same way. After a brief moment of silence, she managed to force a weak smile. "I guess you truly do think of me as a joke." Turning to look at Leon, she bowed her head. Then, without looking back, she left. Her back seemed rather frail when I looked at it. At first, they were slow. Tack, tack. The sound of her steps as her heels tapped against the marble floor. Tack, tack, tack. But they soon hurried. Her head was lowered the entire time. She could see her expression through the polished floor of the campus hall. Ha! The burning in her chest didn't seem to ease no matter how long she walked. Her vision blurred and her lips stung. "B bastard." Her feet eventually came to a stop. A person stood in front of her. "Are you okay?" It was her knight, Natasha. Standing tall, her platinum hair and crystal eyes made her stand out from the rest. Nobles had a unique perk when joining the institute. They were allowed to bring a personal attendant. In Evelyn's case, she was able to bring Natasha with her. It was a precaution the noble houses took considering the political importance each child held within their houses. The Verlice family was one of the 5 Viscount families within the empire. They naturally were able to provide her with a powerful knight as her escort. Was it him? And as her knight, she was naturally aware of her circumstances. Evelyn's silence told many things. Natasha's grip on her sword tightened. So it was Julian Dacre of Venus. A name tingled the tip of her tongue. His relationship with Evelyn was hard to describe. At one point, the two were close. Almost inseparable. But things changed after a certain point. His personality changed, and his lust for power started to display. He changed, and his spiral started to affect Evelyn, who could do nothing but watch. It eventually ended with her cutting ties with him. That was 5 years ago. You know, I thought he could have changed. Evelyn let out a strained laugh. I was naive, wasn't I? In the end, it's always like this. Ha. Her chest trembled. So did her lips. Disappointment after another. Her lips were tucked under her teeth. In the end, I was made fun of by him. She looked up to face Natasha. Unlike before, her eyes seemed a little clearer, but they were still a little misty. Natasha's grip on her sword tightened. That bastard. Do you know what he said to me? Natasha shook her head. Why don't they play poker in the jungle? Yes? Natasha blinked, unable to understand what was going on. Poker? Jungle. But Evelyn continued. Too many cheetahs. Evelyn's shoulders trembled as she lowered her head. Natasha's expression changed all of a sudden. Young miss? Fearing the worst, she approached her. Are you? But she stopped herself halfway. That was because. Oot. Oot. Young miss? Holding her mouth, a strained sound escaped Evelyn's lips. Natasha was taken aback. What's going on? And just before she could do anything, Evelyn's shoulders trembled even more. Young? Caught. Cut? Another sound came out of her mouth. Natasha felt her stomach drop. What? Her hand reached out for her, when? Poochie. Evelyn's cheeks deflated and a laugh escaped her lips. He. Even her laugh seemed strained. She looked up at Natasha, tears rolling down her eyes. I don't even know what is happening to me. A sharp pain pierced her chest as she continued to laugh. Her hand reached to her shirt and clenched it. Why am I like this? He. The joke is bad, so high. She looked helplessly at Natasha. The tears continued to roll down her eyes, and the pain in her chest intensified. He. Why can't I stop laughing?